Good afternoon, my friends. Thank you for tuning in to lesson number 15 of 5 Minutes with Luke. And we are in Luke chapter 13, continuing our study of the man who had a fig tree in his vineyard and he's looking for fruit, looking for those figs, just like you see in your image there. And we understand, though, that Jesus was teaching a lesson. And that lesson is that the God of heaven is a seeking God. He's looking for fruit in my life and in your life, the fruit of righteousness, the fruit of faithful living. And so that has taken us to Galatians 5 and verse number 22, where we learn that the fruit of the Spirit is love. The fruit of the Spirit is joy. Fruit of the Spirit is peace. Fruit of the Spirit is long suffering. And now we come to the next one in that list of fruit of the Spirit. And the fruit of the Spirit is kindness. Kindness. If I look in the dictionary and I want to know what kindness is, don't you hate it when you look in the dictionary and it gives you a definition for like this: kindness, the state or quality of being kind. And you think, now wait a minute, dictionary, that doesn't help me at all. Actually, it simply means having a good or benevolent disposition. And you might be thinking, well, I am not there yet. In other words, you have a kindness or a benevolent or goodness about you, attitude about you, like a kind act or a kind behavior toward other people. We get that, don't we? But if I'm thinking about the fruit of the Spirit being kindness, and I study that Greek word to make sure I get it. If I read from the King James, I read the word gentleness, kindness, gentleness. Again, when I study the Greek, I discover that it goes a little deeper. It's not just talking about being nice to other people, having a niceness kind of attitude, but it actually goes deep enough to mean moral goodness or integrity, benignity, uh, kindness. Now, I use that word. I wasn't trying to use a big word to impress you there, but the idea of benignity, it has basically an understanding of moral excellence in my character, in my demeanor, how I think, how I act toward other people. Have you ever heard someone say, well, there's not a mean bone in his or her body? There's not an unkind uh, bone or thought in that person's heart or body or life. That's the idea here of this word that we read called gentleness. Word we read kindness, which is a fruit of the Spirit. The idea is that we are literally the kind of person, we're harmless when it comes to those around us. So, what does the fruit of kindness, the fruit of gentleness, look like in my life? In Ephesians chapter 2. Let's look at that passage. Ephesians 2, verse 4. But God, who is rich in mercy, because of his great love with which he loved us, even when we were dead in trespasses, made us alive together with Christ. By grace are you saved. That I'm sorry, lost my train of thought. By grace are you saved, and raised us up and made us sit together in heavenly places in Christ Jesus, that in ages to come he might show the exceeding riches of his grace and his kindness toward us in Christ Jesus. For by grace are you saved, not through faith, not of yourselves. It is the gift of God, not of works, lest anyone should boast. For we are his workmanship, created in Christ for good works, for which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them. Back up now just for a second and notice verse number 7, that in ages to come he might show the exceeding riches of his grace in his kindness toward us. That's the word there. If we are God's workmanship, if we are saved by grace through faith, and we're living that kind of life, then we have experienced the kindness of God, the gentleness of God. There is no harmfulness in God. He loved us so much, he was willing to save us. Now, let's turn our attention to Colossians 3 again. We looked at it yesterday. Look at verse 12. Therefore, as the elect of God, holy and beloved, put on tender mercies, put on kindness, humility, meekness, long suffering. We looked at that word long suffering yesterday. We don't react or lash out just because we can. We show restraint. Well, there's another word which is a part of the elect of God, those who are showing forth the fruit of the Spirit. The idea of kindness. But above all these things, put on love, verse 14, which is the bond of perfection. Let the peace of God rule in your hearts. We've looked at that word. The idea there that if you and I are the elect of God, we have a kindness about us. There is a harmlessness about us as we deal with others. People understand we can be trusted because we have God's goodness in us, God's kindness in us. And the fruit which is born on the tree of our lives is kindness. Friends, treat one another with the fruit of kindness, especially during this time. I pray God will bless you with a great weekend.